I am Adam Weil, partner at White Rabbit Group. Welcome to the Pixel Perfect podcast, where we share knowledge, experiences, and motivations from creatives and entrepreneurs. Well, really excited to talk with you today. For the audience that maybe doesn't know you, I'm sure that's probably not too many people. Peter Kang is the co-founder of Barrel, which is a CPG Shopify agency that he started in 2006. And I've actually been following Barrel for quite a while. So I've known about the work you guys have done. You guys have always been one of the more respectable shops, I would say, out there in the market. And I feel like in the past year or two, you've really gotten loud on like social media. It's seen your face and name kind of everywhere. And at this point, you have Barrel Holdings, which is a portfolio of agencies, which I think you have 7 different agencies in there. So just for the audience to kind of know like the breadth and width of, your experience, we're looking at a Shopify agency, a WordPress and Shopify maintenance agency, a Webflow shop, branding agency, UI UX product design systems, and an Amazon agency. So kind of a wide range there. So really excited to talk with you, especially around biz dev today. But yeah, fill in the gaps for me. Is there anything I'm missing there? I'd love for you to just give the audience a little bit more about your background.
Yeah. So first of all, Adam, thanks for having me. Just, only thing I would add to that is, the whole holding company concept, first started off pretty organically in the sense that, as we were, we started, Barrel was pretty generalist in a sense of like, we were doing a little bit of everything for everyone. But as we honed in our, specialization into this kind of Shopify and then now more CPG plus Shopify, there were clients that we had relationships with that we just no longer felt we could service them as well within Barrel. So that was kind of the origination of this separate agency outside of Barrel, and that was Vaulted Oak. And that was, primarily support and maintenance type of work.
Right.
And so it happened very organically. We had somebody from our team kind of separate out of the org and run that totally, hands-free of my involvement and my co-founder's involvement. And he did a great job. We still owned a piece of that business, but he did a great job kind of building that into something very profitable and scaled it nicely. And so we thought, hey, like there's something to this. Decided to try another experiment with BX Studio, which is our Webflow agency. This time brought in a co-founder and CEO from the outside. Gave him some leads that were coming through Barrel, but also, and then, some support of like coaching and, finance ops and things like that. But like, within a very short period of time, quickly scaled that to be one of the larger players in that Webflow ecosystem. So that just with those experiences, we found like, hey, maybe there's something about this kind of portfolio approach of like, having specialized agencies that, focus on very particular things. And then that led us to deciding to get out of the day-to-day of running Barrel. And so that's where, we hatched a succession plan, which we executed a year ago, where, Lucas, who had been a long time, team member, took over as CEO, paved the way for myself and my co-founder Sewuk to focus on Barrel Holdings. And so we've been building the portfolio since. And so, it's been a very, exciting kind of development because, part of it was, hey, we've run this agency for, 18 years. What's the next, 15, 20 years going to look like? And how will the holding company be the vehicle for our kind of, creative vision for what we can build together? So Sewuk and I have like talked a lot, sketched a lot of different things, brainstormed a lot of things. And, we kind of have a view of like this portfolio of specialized agencies that are cash flowing and, allowing us to act more like capital allocators to, either acquire agencies, reinvest in them, and kind of continue to build the portfolio over a long period of time. That's what we're really excited about.
Right. And tell me how you think about these agencies and the portfolio. Like there's agencies out there and individuals that have started and run successful Amazon shops or Shopify agencies or, product design studios, and they just stay in that lane their entire life. Right. And that's like their world. But jumping outside of that would make a lot of people feel uncomfortable. When I look at the website agency habits that you put together, it seems like you sort of have like a framework that everything can sort of follow. Do you think about it that way? Like everything, you're looking at these agencies as someone that could
Yeah.
plug and play into your system, or do you look at them as more individual, unique, bespoke shops that you just have to figure out and problems?
Yeah. I think, so there's, we talk about like there's no kind of like super turnkey way because at the end these are like people businesses and people businesses just there's complexity in that, right? The dynamics of the people involved, both on the team side as well as the type of clients that you're working with. And so, we're very realistic about kind of like, hey, like just because we have some principles written down, some frameworks written down, doesn't mean it applies uniformly and we're going to get the same results every time. But
Mm,
there's definitely like a lot of pattern matching and lessons that we think are timeless and can be applied effectively if done right. So the interesting thing is like we have now across our portfolio agencies at different stages of maturity. Some have been around for longer than others. Some just have done, built up more infrastructure and become more sophisticated in different aspects of the operations. And so that too introduces complexity. So not only is the just the type of people involved different and they have different temperaments, different skills and talents. There's also like where they are in the business journey. And so we take a pretty holistic approach, a systems based approach, and it's more about kind of understanding like, hey, are we continuing to get better? Like, what are the gaps? And just given where the agency is and where we think it could kind of grow to in the next 6 months, 12 months, like plotting out just like, realistic incremental improvements. And so,
right,
we're not coming in with like a, hey, you gotta, try to turbocharge this and grow this X% within X days. It's, hey, like, let's be realistic about who's involved and like, how do we kind of make sure we get the most out of the people here? And then
mm,
what kind of new talent do we need to bring to kind of incrementally build upon that? So
right,
yeah, this is all to say like, we have a lot of ideas, but like we're also pretty realistic about, our ability to impact these agencies. Like, at the end of the day, like we might feel pretty bullish about like an agency we acquire or a co-founder that we team up with to launch a new agency. Uh, but like, we know many things can also go wrong. So, there's a degree of like humility that we just have from having run the business ourselves for so many years. Like it's just, yeah, we don't take anything for granted.
right, right. And what about on the biz dev side of things? You talk a lot about that on LinkedIn. Um, you talk about the habits and different systems there. Do you see that as maybe one of those things that can be more or less applied across all agencies?
Yeah. I mean, this is like, it's hard to give a satisfactory answer because it also depends on like who's doing the selling. And also, for each of these agencies, remember, these are like small teams and, they rely mainly on like the agency leader. So, if it wasn't part of a portfolio, it'd be kind of like founder led sales, right? And so there's a lot of that going on. And so we kind of first start with that, like, hey, what's the, what is the temperament and the strengths and weaknesses of the agency leader and their ability to sell. And so in some cases like they might have that kind of uh engine, that like internal motivation of like continuing to hustle, get just create opportunities for themselves and kind of leverage a bit of like personal branding on LinkedIn, going to just continue to build relationships in person at events and other things to just really see the action and then kind of build relationships over a long period of time. And so with we like having those types of folks in the orbit because there's a degree of acceleration they provide in building up that ramping up that sales effort um, and
Sure.
and getting to business development. But then even those folks might need some coaching and some tightening up of like how do you take those opportunities and then take them through the process of like you know um walk them through the value proposition, think about pricing, how do you scope it properly, and then how do you kind of have closing conversations and then get to the contract signing. So there's a
Right.
degree, yeah, of like process and coaching that will help with. And then there are others that just like sales is very much not part of their nature, or like that activity of being, social, like, networking, all those things might not come natural to them. And so sometimes with those folks, we might lean more into like, okay, is it creating content and like kind of, trying to get some leverage there. And then maybe we got to pair you up with somebody who's more on the ground. Just
Mhm.
some other ways to augment it.
Mm,
And
mhm.
we have those instances as well. So yeah, like definitely not, still not like a one size fits all approach, but like,
Right.
we basically have a toolkit of things that we can kind of, bring to the table to help augment our agency leaders.
Right. 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 So it's like, all right, we have these principles that we know work. Whether or not that founder or that leader is going to be doing it, that's where the people equation comes into the play, and we might need to swap in some folks or, you know, trade
Yeah.
roles here in certain things.
And, one thing to add is like early on, some of the best things you can do from a business development perspective is just do like an incredible job for the few clients that you do have. So, that in itself is it's its own, you could say like a sales and marketing play.
Right.
Like, so it's interesting because like if you just have somebody who's like, go, 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 sell, 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 but then like they just can't operationalize and like deliver on that. It's just that's a leaky kind of a situation where no matter how much more new business you land, you'll always be playing catch up.
Mm,
Whereas, you can have somebody who might not be great at that, sales, kind of the sales motion externally, but
mhm.
they take care of the few clients they have, they build great relationships, and that like they start that referral engine in a big way so that, they're able
Right.
to, retain the clients they have, but then, incrementally add a new client just through word of mouth and then build something that
Right.
way. So yeah, like I said, it's not like there's strengths to both. And like ideally you can have somebody who can do both of those things, or, or you can pair up, the agency leader with kind of a support team that can get them there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, from our side, we work with a lot of different agencies, right? And I heard someone say at one point, like the best business development strategy you can have is just to do incredible work, world class work.
Mhm. Right.
But how funny is it? Because you and I have been in this, space for a while. So many clients come to us, with some nightmare scenario or just like really, feeling like this other company completely dropped the ball, and they tell you what happened and you hear about it and you go, man, that's so simple. They should have done this. But it's so common. Like it's so common. There's so many agencies that just don't do a great job. What's up with that? Like, why is that happening from your perspective? And then, like, what would you say to folks like that? Because maybe this is where my mind's going with this. Is I feel like sometimes agencies get to a point where they do subpar work at some point or another, and that
Mhm.
becomes like a new standard for them. They sort of accept it, and they're like okay with that. I think it's something about the standards. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, I've become a lot more kind of understanding of rough patches agencies can go through because obviously I've experienced it firsthand and as well as like across our portfolio. These things kind of happen when certain stresses are put on a system. So like for example, like maybe like, and this is like it's you think about an ecosystem and kind of like the you know second third order effects of kind of things that you think are all going in the right direction. So give you an example, like one of our agencies, they do incredible work. So then like the clients love them and they just get like this incredible wave of referrals. And it's a small team. And so like all of a sudden they're like kind of, they say yes and they don't kind of plan for it as well. And then now they're drowning with work. And so all of a sudden just they're scrambling to just get some, contract and expand the team, and like they're just unable to keep up with it. And so like even though
Mhm.
they were so, um, you know, laser focused on quality at the start, like it just little by little things slip, and like the
Mhm.
experience, and maybe the output of the work is still great in the sense of like the final product, but like
Mhm.
maybe the communications kind of suffers, and the client's like, hey, like like when am I going to see the next round of whatever, or when is this going to get done? And it's just like that those breakdowns create just a bad taste in the client's mouth, and then like
Mhm.
eventually like they churn and then they end up going to another agency kind of complaining about these things. And so I kind of
Yeah.
understand that because like we've been recipients of, yeah, like clients who come and like had that experience, but like doesn't mean that agency was terrible. It could be that they were going through a rough stretch and they just didn't, kind of operationalize when they, felt some of these stresses. And so, and they happen and, come in various forms, right? Like it could be a surge in new business. It could be that, some key people left and like they're scrambling to kind of backfill those roles. It could also be that, a couple of their existing clients just took up so much bandwidth because of growth that some of the other accounts suffered. So it's
Really.
like, it could be like within the agency. And this is like, I remember like a period, when we were just with Barrel, like we had, maybe 6, 7 accounts that were just like, we were just, so behind and like dropping the ball left and right. And it just felt like, the world was burning overall, but just because those 6, 7 like projects were just going terribly wrong. But like there were also like 20 other projects that were just going just fine, and like the clients like so those clients would have happily vouched for us and whatever. But so it's not.
Sure.
So it's always
Yeah. It's
kind
not
of
black and
like,
white. Yeah.
yeah, it's not black and white. There's always like, there's always some degree. And even like now, like some of our agencies that we're like, oh man, everything is going so well. They're growing so fast. There's still patches where like they drop the ball for a client for whatever reason. And
Hmm.
then like, we'll churn somebody and they'll probably go to another agency and be like, hey, these guys, they did not take care of me. Hopefully you guys can, you know, do better.
Yeah. 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 Cool. I appreciate the feedback on that. You might have a little bit more of an empathetic perspective on it with the portfolio companies. I think ours is kind of unique because we partner with so many agencies that outsource their development to us, and so we're often white labeled, and we don't have a say of managing that relationship. And we see sometimes the partners drop the ball, and
Hmm.
and we see we help them respond to RFPs. Like there's a lot of opportunities that maybe aren't like a shoe in fit, but depending on that communication, that can dictate whether or not they win the project as well. And
Right.
uh, but we don't want to like step on toes and tell them how to run their agency. So it's an interesting balance. But yeah, it's good to get your take on that. Okay, so yeah, that kind of dovetails into biz dev a little bit more. Like something we talked about on our last call, which is agencies like under leveraging their referral network. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why is that happening? Um, yeah, I could just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, it's almost it's a common kind of trope, just at least in my experience, speaking with agency owners, and also just kind of, in the let's say the LinkedIn space, you see it often where folks feel like they've tapped, when they say they've tapped their network, as in like the inbound referrals stop coming for whatever
Mm.
reason. So like they had a certain volume that they felt was, kind of reliably coming in, but then it stops coming. And so, you know, a lot of times like they might make some cursory kind of like outreach to an immediate kind of like, oh, like our most recent clients, or like, some folks kind of that sent them some referrals maybe the last few months. Maybe that effort, but then the thought goes to, oh, we've tapped our network. We're gonna
Mhm.
go
Yeah.
try outbound now. We're gonna try to do some cold emails or cold
So they just
LinkedIn
kind of give up
messages.
altogether
Yeah.
on the inbound and go straight to outbound.
It, and it's kind of like did you really, did you really try, enough to kind of tap into that network? And it's also understanding that like a lot of this, like a lot of referrals, you can't predict when they'll come because like not everyone that might be a good fit for a referral are in a buying moment, like they're not in the market to buy anything, buy your services right now, but that doesn't mean like they're like that you shouldn't reach out to them and kind of stay top of mind. And so I think there's a wealth of relationships that every person has, especially if they've just kind of, been at different places over the years, and, just kind of different folks that they've met, through the work that they've done. I think there's so much to tap. And, I kind
Right.
of like, think about the different buckets, even like, I've written about this in the past of like the types of referrals. So if you start thinking about it, kind of have some categories or taxonomies of referrals, then it helps you kind of figure out, okay, like maybe I could be more strategic about like how I think about the referrals, and then,
Mm,
like how I can, kind of sow some seeds so that the relationship stays current and is something
mm,
that can yield opportunities later on. So
right.
obviously, like clients are one of them, right? Like former and existing clients, and former clients, especially if you've been in business, for more than a few years, like that can be a lot. And
Mm,
just because some clients who don't work with you may still enjoy or like, like respect, what you're able to do. It's just that they've kind of moved on to other things, but that doesn't mean, they won't be, willing referrers, right? If it comes
mm,
down to it. Honestly, even folks that have churn, there's still ways to like activate them. If you've kind of been humble about getting feedback from them, and you've kind of been like, hey, like, we love, like you've kind of like reflected on it, and like kept some kind of a relationship, even if they decide to work with someone else. Like, we've had boomerang clients in the past, or we've had people who've fired us to only to refer us work later. Like these things are
yeah.
possible. So, just there, like there, you still have
Yeah.
a wealth of possibilities. And then there's like other kind of refer types that we've seen over the years. So like, especially if you're working in either like a startup space or the private equity space, you get these investor types that, kind of influence the companies that they invest in making agency decisions. So like, VCs are a good example where, they might be an investor in a startup, and then, you know, the startup's like, hey, like VC, do you know good agencies that might do XYZ? And so they might, they're a good source there. And then private equity also, like, especially when they're acquiring a business and they need to do some kind of transformation, or some due diligence or whatever, like it's good to kind of, know those folks. And so,
Right.
you might have worked with somebody in that period, and like, we try to make a point, like even when we're working with clients, where we realize might see sometimes like, oh, they have investors in XYZ, these are their investors, and sometimes we might want to, you know try to get an intro to those investors or something, because you never know, like those
Mm,
folks have these kind of
mm,
relationships that kind of scale a bit better because of the portfolio game they're playing. So that could
right.
that could be another source. And then there's like more channel specific partnerships. So if you're, working in certain types of platforms, or like in a tech ecosystem, you're going to have like all these partners that you can, befriend and kind of work with each other. Cause like, you might be bringing them deals, like let's say using their particular solution, and, there might be opportunities to co-market together. There might be, opportunities for them to send you leads as well. So just
Right.
building those relationships, and there's always, if you're, especially depending on the ecosystem. So for us, like, Shopify is a big one where there's so many different partners. And so, we have good relationships with, a dozen plus partners, and, we get different types of leads from them, and we make sure to kind of bring them opportunities as well. So,
Mm,
like, I think that could be rich depending on the type of space you play. So like I said, that's another referring channel as well. And then like you could play the whole agency game. Like, there's agency partnerships. I mean, you guys are no strangers to that, but like, there's like complementary agencies, right? Where, you might, yeah, like for us, if we're focused on web, we might, partner with branding agencies that, kind of have clients who need to be referred downstream to a web agency, or we might, have paid marketing agencies who like we refer a lot of business to, but then they might have, kind of clients who need to revisit their website and they could kick back to us. So just like
right.
having those kinds of things built out, and having the relationships there. Even competitor agencies, honestly, like, you might
Mm,
think, oh, like we're going head to head on some of these, but like just building the relationships, you never know, because like there are cases where, a competitor agency, if you're friendly with them, they might have a client in a space, and for competitive non-compete reasons, right? Like a client won't let them work with another brand in that space. They can just kick it all over, be like, "Hey, we got this lead, but we're just not allowed to work with them. Do you guys want this?" And so there's
mm,
cases like that. There's kind of things where I call it like the big sibling, little sibling relationship, where like you have an agency that's kind of at either a bigger, they're working with bigger budgets and just kind of more upstream from where you are, so they might refer
Right.
you the smaller stuff. So you go like, if someone's crumbs
Yeah, yeah.
or like
We don't take
someone's crumbs
projects
might be
under
your meal ticket.
250K.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. So there's that kind of thing, and then like it's good for you to cultivate your downstream partners as well, so you can send them the smaller
yeah,
stuff, and like so I think there's like a wealth of things you could just do with people doing the exact same thing as you, and then
right.
it just keeps on going. There's like a broker, agency search consultants, like these folks that kind of make it a point
Yeah.
to like connect folks, and there might be a commission aspect to it, but whatever. Like those are still deals that to be referred. Even your own employees, like I've heard of stories where like incentivizing employees with referral bonuses. Like someone's dad is like CMO at somewhere, or like someone's mom is like an investor somewhere. Like you never know with these things, and so that's another channel for referrals. And then, of course, there's like friends, acquaintances, alumni that you might have gone to school with, like so many different things. So, like, once you kind of understand the different categories, you're like, wow, like there's endless, you know,
Mm,
pool of people that you can,
yeah.
potentially draw business from. It's just, of course, if your timeline is, hey, I need leads tomorrow, I need leads like next week, yeah, like the results are not going to be great. But like if you kind of think about it as, hey, let me keep planting seeds, and some of these are going to come, months from now, some of them are going to come years from now. But
Mhm.
like just do the planting and just like make that the discipline. Then you can continue to have that deal flow.
Yeah, yeah, makes so much sense. Yeah, I want to go on a quick tangent real quick, and we'll kind of come back. Because when I hear all this, ideas about going deeper into your network and all these different channels, and ways to do that, like you said, it requires watering, right? You gotta. It's not just like a one message. It's just like, hey, how's it
Yeah.
going? Got any project? Like you need to nurture that, and it's got to be a genuine relationship there. So when I think about that, I think about there's definitely time associated with that, ongoing time.
Mhm.
And then there's other time requirements when I look at, the agency habits, right? Like doing a weekly, biz dev meeting, basically, a monthly kind of all hands on deck meeting. There's certain things that take time. And when I think about a smaller agency where their resources, time resources, especially, are really limited, um, what advice do you have there? I mean, you've really walked the journey, right? You had your own agency, and now you've helped build other ones and acquire them. So I feel like you've seen it at all the different stages. What advice can you provide there for the agency owner that does feel like there's just too much to do and they don't know where to focus their energy?
Yeah. So one of the reasons I started writing agency habits, our site kind of for agency operators, was like because I really believe so much in this message of like there's you can't uh you can't rely on like heroic one-time efforts to fix things, because like first of all, like yes, there might be some short-term relief in whatever that fix is, but it's just not sustainable. Plus like like that that fix is probably temporary, and so you haven't built anything durable, and so just kind of obviously inspired by things like Atomic Habits by James Clear and other books like, in the concepts of like Kaizen, continuous improvement, total quality, like all that stuff. Like, just, I think, the thing, I would suggest is, like think about, yeah, these kind of small things that you can do. Actually, A Slight Edge is another good book. But like these are like things that like the small things that you can do, daily, weekly, that compound over time. And it's got to be things that are like super easy to do. So yeah, like a weekly pipeline review. That is, you block out 30 minutes and you have a tight structure and you just go, hey, look, no matter what fires are happening, like, every Tuesdays at, whatever, 11 a.m., we're all going to meet and just talk about the business pipeline. That's cool. Another
Mm,
one might be like, hey, I'm going to reach out to X number of contacts every week. So let's say like, no matter what, I'm going to reach out to 5 people every week. And, this could be a mix of any of those referral types that I mentioned, or, just whoever it might be. But you just make that a point of like, look, and you could just be, you could break it down to make it easy for yourself. You could go, hey, it's just one per weekday. So every day at 9 a.m. before, I'm like at my desk, or settled into my desk, I'm just going to send that one email before
mm,
I dive into anything else. Right. Like
Yeah.
easy to do and keep that chain going. Or you go, look, every Thursdays at, 10 a.m. For 20 minutes, I'm just gonna send 5 emails, spend like
Yeah.
4 minutes on
Yeah.
each and just boom, do it. Like, and you
Yeah.
just kind of, you mark the X's. You go like every week, you just go in and out, in and out, in and out. And like, those five things, those five contacts, ends up being 20 a month, ends up being, 200 plus a year. And you do that for 5 years, like you've done a thousand touches. And it's like, it adds up. And it's like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
sure, in the moment, like 20 doesn't feel like a lot, and you're probably not going to see much results, but like, over the course of a year, like you're going to start, you go, wow, like that led to that deal, that led to this deal, like it's just continues to compound. So I just
Yeah.
I believe so much in the power of these kinds of small things adding up to big things if you're disciplined enough to stick with it. And so that's why like agency
Right.
habits, I just thought was the framework to kind of think through a lot of the things that honestly, like so much of the advice might be like, hey, like fix this in 90 days and you're good to go. But it's like I just don't think it really works that way in the sense that, if you're trying to build something durable, it's got to be a behavior mindset shift towards something that,
Mhm.
like it requires a lot of discipline.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah, and it's a good reminder to hear. I think a lot of the folks in the agency space are very creative minded, and they don't like routine all the time. Sometimes they're a little bit they steer away from it. But yeah, when I look at some of the agencies that we work with, and as well as ourselves, the systems, like if you can just have those right systems, habits, as you put it, man, I feel like that is really the key. It just keeps you stable, and when you have those systems, it's easier to say no. Because I think so many agencies, their time is strapped, as we're talking about, and then they get constant requests from employees, from different people outside the company, and if they're trying to just say yes, if they don't have that system there, then everything's just going to fall apart. And so when they have that system, it's just much easier to say no. I have this responsibility to take care of, and then I can address that. And yeah, it's just a good reminder for us all.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, cool, man. Okay, so yeah, diving bring thanks for the tangent there. Yeah, what's like the biggest mistake you see agencies make when they start doing outbound? So let's say they got the inbound strategy and habits going. Now they want to look at outbound. What do you see there?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake just is thinking that outbound is like this single effort is going to solve things. It's almost like a Hail Mary throw versus kind of seeing outbound as, you know, one of, multiple, like, this kind of concerted effort that has to kind of coexist with other marketing efforts.
Mhm.
So, just because you turn on, yeah, your cold email campaigns and you're like targeting your ICP, and you're hoping like, okay, deliverability is good, the messaging we're testing, blah, blah, blah. And then we're using Clay to personalize it. And then like, somehow we're going to get this stuff. It's like, okay, like how well are you doing to, figure out, like, is your website, kind of structured in a way with the right kind of content, case studies? Is there social kind of showing up in a way, whether it's, your personal social or your agency social, whatever it is, to kind of send some signals that, you're an expert in a space, knowing what you're doing. There's other
Hey,
things too, like, when they do a Google search of you, like whatever the prospect will get your message, like what's showing up about your agency? Like, is there thought leadership there? Is there things that are going to intrigue them? So there's a lot of things. And that's like content marketing, it might be even be event stuff, like somebody who got your stuff and then, they're going to some of these events, and like, are you showing up there as well? Because like, like
yeah,
as we know from doing marketing for clients, like, it takes multiple touches for folks to move through that customer journey. Like, why would you believe that the outbound, one outbound message, or okay, cool, you got the automation of like 10 messages going out to those folks, like, but do you think that's enough to kind of get them? Because like it's just not enough. I think it just doesn't paint enough of a compelling picture for a lot of folks. And so, yeah, like, sure, you might get some hits, and yeah, depending on what the offer or the call to action might be, like you might move some people into it. But like for a lot of this stuff, especially, where a lot of the things come from like trust-based selling. In the absence of a warm referral, like you really have to build trust in other ways. And so I think like that has to show up in, a lot of the kind of content, thought leadership, and like the way that others kind of might have referenced you. And those things are going to be more important than
Mm,
ever if you want the outbound stuff to work.
right, right, right. Yeah, and you mentioned too that it, even if you have like a really good email campaign, if your website's not, the positioning isn't right, the funnel, the flow there, there's no, positive trust signals. So talk about that, like a lot of agencies I think are maybe a little unclear with their positioning and messaging. Um, yeah, what kind of mistakes do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, I think classic mistake is just kind of being too kind of focused on like this is what we do and what can we can do for you. And so there's that component, which I don't think is always that bad, but like, it's in some ways like when you're talking about, let's say, hey, we can do website design development for you, right? And that, in some ways it doesn't land as well because if you take it even one step further, you go, look, like we can do, this type of either programming language or this type of CMS for you. That actually has a better shot because, like, at the receiving end, the prospect might be like, oh, we're having a lot of trouble with our site core or whatever. Like, our WordPress setup is a mess. And so, like, to be like, hey, we can help you with WordPress because, like, of our experience, blah, blah, blah. Like, that'll land better. I mean, not saying it's still great, but like, there's that component of like, that positioning which helps. And so the specificity definitely
Mm,
matters a lot. And the more, yeah, the more you can kind of narrow that and like, pair that, right? So it's kind of like, all right, like we do, we do like incredible like, I mean, I think this has been working really well for us of like the Shopify websites for like CPG, especially the food and bev. And so like that, because like
mhm,
and we talk a lot about omnichannel. It's like, hey, look, you need a D2C presence, right? Direct to consumer channel, but we know most of your sales happen at the grocery store. Let us help you figure out how to make best use that website to not only capture some D2C revenue, but also send customers to where they can buy your products at the grocery store. And so, like like cracking that, our message has gotten really focused. Our
mm,
outbound has gotten way more focused, and our content marketing has gotten really focused. And this is all for Barrel. And
mhm,
the leads coming in now are like, oh, it's that grocery brand. It's that brand
mm,
that sells at the grocery store. It's that brand that sells at the grocery
mhm,
store. And like you kind of see that working because it's
mhm.
resonating way more because they're like, oh yeah, like you guys get us. Like I think these guys would know the things that we need to figure out with this. And so I think
Yeah.
it takes a lot of work. I mean, it's taken us a lot of work to get there because, we started pretty broad. Yeah. Website design development. And then we did Shopify. And then even within that, it's kind of going into this like CPG omnichannel commerce. So
Mhm.
yeah. And I'm sure there's still more work to be done there, but like,
Yeah.
that just goes to show the difference between marketing that versus something super generic.
Right, right. Yeah, right. There's more talk about niching down, over the past few years, especially. It feels like, I'm a big fan of Corey Quinn's book, like, Anyone, Not Everyone. And I feel like there's more momentum getting there. And it's hard for leaders, I think, to say no to like a certain group. They're like, all right, well, we're never going to appeal to this group anymore. It's like I think we have to get over that hump of like thinking that it's just shrinking our opportunity. But it's really like concentrating it. And yeah, one thing that I saw an agency do, they took their same website and they just put the category of client, that beauty. So it was their name, and then it was beauty. And they did the same thing for like dot sports and like all these,
Right.
4 or 5 different categories. They changed the colors. Each website had the same exact website. They just changed some of the copy, a lot of the copy, and the colors, and obviously the images and all the case studies were all geared towards that specific
Mhm.
niche. And yeah, I've seen a lot of success in that. And yeah,
Yeah,
thought that's
no,
an
and I
interesting.
think that's great. Like it's you don't have to like lock into just one thing and at the expense of all the others. Like there are ways to segment your marketing and just be more thoughtful about how you show up to the, very like multiple ICPs you might have. And so I think, yeah, it's not an all or nothing, like, it's just like with anything, like there's no need to be dogmatic. You can be pretty pragmatic and like kind of
Mm.
test out different things that work for you. But I think it's worth experimenting. Like, and that's the kind of main thing with any of this positioning stuff and marketing, business development on the agency front. Is just like keep trying stuff and like continue to see what works and doesn't, and like yeah, don't be afraid to keep going. I think the worst thing to do is like just be in denial about these things and not test stuff out.
Right, right. So how do you keep your salespeople and your leader? How do you keep them accountable? And agency leaders.
Yeah. So for the holding company, we have our quarterly. So we have our annual and our quarterly meetings where so at the annual level, we're looking at the year ahead, and we'll talk about, and we start these discussions around like November, and we try to get to by end of December, like we're kind of locked into some kind of projection and forecast for the next year. A lot of times it's a collaborative thing where the agency leader will come to us and be like, "Hey, I think we're going to target like 30% growth top line next year, and this is what we're thinking about profits, and this is how we think we're going to get there." And so they kind of present the plan, and we kind of go through it, and there might be some degree of calibration. Sometimes we might be like, "Hey, that feels very aggressive. Maybe like have you thought of XYZ things and these kinds of headwinds?" And they might temper the expectations a bit then, or it might be too conservative, and we might be like, hey, actually, these signs seem strong. Maybe you want to bump that up. And so, it's a conversation, collaboration, and then kind of align on a number. And then after that, like I mean, every quarter we're revisiting it. I mean, we see it every week, so like we kind of get a pulse of it, and might, if things are like really off the rails, we'll have conversations during the quarter. But like
Mm.
when at the end of every quarter, we'll review what happened, and we'll think about, hey, like on track, off track, what are we doing to kind of, if it's going well, like what are we doing to continue the momentum? What are things that we need to watch out for? If it's not going well, like what are we doing to course correct? So there's a lot of those conversations and actions. And yeah, like
Mm.
it's just the reporting structure makes it very kind of simple for like they they need to be accountable, the agency leader, so they're doing that.
Right.
So that's at the holdco level across the portfolio. And then just each agency, they have their own weekly kind of rhythm of like if they have a sales team, they're whether it's like account execs, BD folks, or like the account managers kind of selling into existing accounts, like they're having weekly pipeline reviews, and they have like business booking kind of goals that they're working towards every quarter, so they kind of track the progress of that. They're talking about deals, reviewing the CRM, the different deal stages, and like where they're at. So yeah, like that's how they're
Mm.
they're kind of taking what we do at the annual and quarterly level, and then kind of like getting more granular and doing it at the weekly level. And then same deal, like if certain things aren't moving as fast, or like, hey, like we're 30% of the way through the quarter, but we're kind of tracking behind. Like, hey, what are the things that we're going to do to kind of speed this up or get this to close faster? And so they're having those conversations every week.
Mm-hmm. And what about the habits? Do you track the habits as well? Maybe some of those granular ones as far as inbound, or do you really try to focus more on the results and output?
Yeah, I mean, like this is the thing. It's like you know, we're always sharing the habits, and we'll be like, look, this is what's worked for us. And like, in the end, like these are the agency leaders, and sometimes they'll share with their own teams, but like they have to kind of have that internal intrinsic motivation to want to adopt it. So like we're very careful not to be like, hey, you're required to send X amount of emails a week, or like we don't do any of that. It's like, look, this is what's worked for us, and like this is what we know can build up over time. Like, and this is,
Right.
and we'll just tell the stories of like where it's worked for us. And yeah, some folks kind of take it to heart, and like we'll try their best to kind of implement it. Others just for whatever reason haven't quite gotten there yet, and maybe they will or maybe they won't. Like, but these are things that we're not overly prescriptive about, but like we make them aware of it, and we'll bring it up every chance we can to be like, hey, if you're not doing it, you should.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Cool. And I gotta ask you about AI, of course, because it's a pretty common topic these days. How do you think about AI when it comes to your agencies and sort of what the future holds?
Yeah. I think we're in the camp of like, look, let's, be opportunistic, see where it could be helpful in our productivity, the work that we do. One of the things that, we're seeing, especially, for the agencies that are kind of involved in certain platforms like Shopify or Webflow, there's AI being infused into those platforms as well. So we go, hey, look, it's important to stay up to date on those things and, kind of get ahead of it so we can kind of learn it and get comfortable with it so that we can then share the benefits of that with our clients. And so, yeah, I think if we're just, continuing to evolve and, like update our processes and like embrace some of the ways that these things are changing, I think we'll be fine. And then like, of course, like, you know, over at certain junctures, we might have to like revisit some of the ways that we package, our services, the way we price these things. If let's say like staffing materially changes because AI has kind of made certain things much more automated, then that could be savings passed on to clients. It could
Mm,
mean it could mean temporarily more margin for us, but like we have to kind of continue to look also outside at what the market forces are and like think about like, hey, what's going on in the competitive landscape, and also figure out like, yeah, with AI, are there other services that we could offer? I mean, some of the things, some simple things is like, like leveraging Gen AI for content creation type of stuff across some of our agencies that are doing some creative work is, that's been great. So like, you got to figure out ways to price that better and be smart about, how we handle that with clients.
yeah.
So yeah, there's a number of things, and there's every week, I'm sure, it's the same for you, is like there's new developments, new integrations, new things that we're kind of having to think about and explore. So it's
Yeah.
almost like, hey, like let's not think that we can, for whatever reason, like build something on our own and that's going to be kind of the secret sauce for us. Let's just, I almost think like to some degree being a bit reactive in this environment is okay on the AI front. Cause like
Mm,
the stuff that you think is so cool now and you invest a ton of time building it could just be easily overtaken in a few weeks if you just kind of overinvest in that. So we've been kind of, you know, like taking more of a wait and see approach of things like that. I mean, like, even just thinking about something
mm,
like ChatGPT and HubSpot or whatever, it's like, I
mhm.
think like there was like a real, hey, we need to go to a more like AI native CRM because like, HubSpot is, is dated now, whatever. But it's kind of like, is it? I don't know. Like, I'm sure they're thinking about AI pretty deeply. So,
Yeah.
like we're not gonna like, should we abandon, like 15 years of database, stuff in there to like,
Right.
just because of this, like, and so we're not in a rush to kind of do these things, but at the same time, like, we'll try to embrace things as they happen.
Yeah, yeah. So you're taking a more like prudent approach, like, all right, let's just keep our head in a swivel, see what's working for other folks, let them do the experimentation and pay the money to try and
Right.
experiment. And but, and then when the things work and they appear to work that way well for a period of time, then adopt it.
Absolutely. And like, the thing that always it comes back to is like, look, keep our ear to the ground of you know, what the clients value and like, are we delivering value for our clients? Like, are we doing the things that they care most about? Because,
Mm,
you know, like, is it okay? Like, is the AI gonna make it better for us to like communicate exceptionally with the client and like make sure that we're
mm,
super responsive to them, that we're answering their clients, answering their questions with clarity, kind of giving them that like peace of mind about the projects that we're working on. Like, yeah, if AI is kind of helping augmenting that, great. Like, you find ways to incorporate it for that, but a lot of times it's just doing the basics well over and over again, and it's still kind of like building that relationship through just reliable behaviors that predates AI.
right. Right. Well, I love it. Peter, thanks for the conversation, man. This is really fun and hopefully helpful for listeners.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Pixel Perfect podcast, where we go down the rabbit hole on the journey and motivations of creatives and entrepreneurs. Stay tuned for more stories to come. Until next time.